Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
What up, brother Glenn?
Hey, man. How you doing, brother?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, man. So I love it. We always say that we should have like a hot mic
I know.
before the show. So, I know you always introduce table for three. We got a table for three today, and our guest says, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. I'm like, hey, whatever, man. It all works. We just get on and we roll. And
we roll three guys in a coffee shop.
You know, probably the biggest review we get from folks is how real this is.
Well, that's,
we don't get on and we don't pussyfoot around and we're just real.
And can I take this moment to talk about our sponsor?
Yeah.
We don't have one.
Right.
I mean, we have sponsors, but we don't have sponsors, if you know what I mean.
We almost did at one time.
We
had a quasi one.
Was that the coffee company that wanted to sponsor us?
And we had somebody else. But And they were trying to shape how things were going. Yeah. And I'm like, this ain't. I'm like, no.
We're not anyone's payroll.
Right.
Yeah,
so, man, you know what we are? We're a couple guys in a coffee shop. Now we're three guys in a coffee shop.
Person.
Danny G's over on the couch sleeping. Oh, he's awake now.
Oh, Danny G's awake.
Danny G.
But we got Don in the house.
I know.
Today.
Don, welcome, man.
Halfway, welcome, man.
So that takes it from a duo to a trio.
It takes it from whatever you want. That's right.
Trio. That's right.
Trio with Dan on the couch.
Table for trio. So ran across Don. Actually, Danny, last week's guest, introduced me to. We went to a retreat last year, which I highly recommend. Just taking time, just carving out time in your life. Go to that retreat. Stop thinking about all the worldly stuff and just focus on sobriety and community and learning and growing, right? And so anyway, we went to this and we're sitting there, Dan and I, and all of a sudden this big imposing, I've got a small frame, right? And this big imposing guy walks in and he's talking to the side of the room. And Danny G goes to me, "That's Don." He goes, "Oh, do I got a story?" Well, I had time for a story. I was on a retreat. He said, this guy berated me. He beat me up. He is so rough. And anyway, I've got to know Don now over the past 12 months. And here's why I invited him to the coffee shop this morning, Glenn. We're talking about life and death here. Sobriety. For me, anyway. For me, it was life or death. I was on a fast path to death, and I'm living now. I'm living a life that I can't even imagine, that I was never able to imagine. Don's a tough love kind of guy. I mean, he talks about this issue, and he works with people on the front line and conveys the importance and the urgency of sobriety. And I love you for that, man, because you're on the front line. And I love you for that because people out there need to hear the message.
Well, back to Danny, what we were saying off mic. I mean, Harry Tebow, who writes some phenomenal AA literature, he writes one, Surrender versus Compliance, and the therapeutic value of surrender in recovery. And watching Danny, he also writes, Tebow does, he says, the first miracle in AA is for me. And the next miracle is watching the next man get his. And I know,
love that.
Any AAer that's, really working a program, it can be somewhat scintillating if that's not overstretching.
Sure.
To watch the next man get his miracle.
Isn't it amazing?
Pulling up here and looking at Danny and seeing him mostly in his right mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well,
and
let's go with mostly.
Yeah,
well, I say mostly. We're not gonna,
let's define that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is something else, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah. Glenn describes it as you can't read the label on your own jar, right? And Dan and I work together on the program of AA and improving ourselves. We work together constantly, and we both feel there's much more growth that can happen. So, yeah. So anyway, we were talking this week, and you flopped out a David Goggins quote on me, and I thought it was pretty strong and prophetic.
I love DG.
Yeah, and if you get a chance to
He's
check
a
it out,
badass.
I'm going
to tough love.
I'm going to read this, and maybe this will kick us off here a little bit. So this is from David Goggins, and it says, a lot of us surround ourselves with people who speak to our desire for comfort. Who would rather treat the pain of our wounds and prevent further injury than help us callous over them and try again? We need to surround ourselves with people who will tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, but at the same time, not make us feel we're up against the impossible. I was up against the impossible, and I had to have people in my life that had to tell me the hard truth. And they told me, first and foremost, I'm an alcoholic. I have to decide that. Am I an alcoholic who cannot ever drink again? And that word ever really crushed me. But I'm going to guess that when you're working with your guys, when you're out there in the community working on the front lines, that they have to understand this is serious and they can't drink again.
You know, a line I've always appreciated in the big book, and by the way, I was listening to Glenn, and I said, good. You know, Glenn's obviously read the book. You know, the old joke, if you want to hide something from an alcoholic, put it in the book.
That's funny. I've never heard that.
The line that's always grabbed me about working with others, it says, no one has sunk too low or is too discredited. And here's contingency, if our man means business.
Yes.
And I mean, that's such a powerful line. And it's not like it's not like we're using a judgment, more a discernment. But I have to vibe, you know, to thine self be true. You don't just walk in and, you know, oh, I'm 48 hours clean from alcohol and cocaine, whatever else your thing is. And all of a sudden the truth just starts spewing from you. You know, I needed a little help to get truth, you know, and it wasn't, you know, I learned a lot of things early in sobriety. One of them was God did not answer my prayers as I had sought. You know, you talked about the grandiosity of an alcoholic, you know, and I thought, oh my God, you know, I haven't used cocaine or alcohol in a week. I should, you know, the scene from Coming to America with Eddie Murphy where they're throwing the rose petals at his feet. Suddenly I'm a prince, you know, it's just not reality. Or that now that I'm a month sober, 2 months sober is the Walgreens commercial, you know, every day it's 78 degrees, 18% humidity, wind out of the, you know, that's.
It didn't happen that way.
Well, that doesn't happen that way. You know, maybe in a fairy tale, but not
you
in
know what helped me early in sobriety? Because, I mean, change is tough. Change takes time. It just does. You know, they say, you know, it takes 90 days to create a new habit. Not with alcohol, man. For me, it was a crock brain. It was so ingrained. And you know what really helped me with that is my sponsor. Because I tried to get away with early sobriety with some major wins, right? I was trying to build myself up bigger than reality, right? So back then I talked to my sponsor every single day, right? And I kind of give him a rundown and I would lay out some wins and he would diminish every single one of them.
Yeah.
You know, because I was trying to make myself up as like I've got this. Hey man, I registered my car on time, right?
Wow, ding, ding, ding.
And he's like, so what? I'm like, yeah, that's the first time I've done that in 10 years. You know, he goes, so what? That's what everyday, normal, functioning people do. Hey, I took the trash out. So what? You know, and I was trying to get myself built up bigger, and he helped me with reality, you know, of hey, let's reset that grandiosity. You don't need to be a hero. You don't need the accolades because you took out the fucking trash.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
who helped you, by the way? If you could do a shout out.
Yeah,
I mean,
or
who took
a little snippet of your story.
Yeah, who brought
a little
who brought you
snippet of
into
my
this?
story. Who helped me?
Yeah.
Was kind of an oxymoron. It would be called the Cook County criminal justice system.
Okay.
That's who helped me.
Whoever your first sponsor was, a big shout out to Cook County.
You know,
Warden so-and-so.
Judge Tillman helped a lot. You know, I must have had the one really good prosecutor in Cook County.
Okay.
Awesome.
You know, I thought I had watched just enough episodes of Law and Order to be the good
Sometimes
defendant.
you have excellence thrust upon you.
I got to give you a great story. So, you know, obviously you're in court and like I say, you think you're going to be the great defendant and all of a sudden it doesn't really break as you had sought, okay? And I went to an AA meeting. I remember it was a 3rd and 11th step meeting. And it was in a basement. And the club's no longer there. It was on 47th in Springfield. And this guy who subsequent, I've never saw him subsequent to this simple comment he made. Never saw him prior. But, you know, I'm ticked off. It didn't go well. The judge literally says, despite the fact the defendant is his own worst enemy. And when he said that, it just put a light on, because every nun I ever had in grammar school, every Christian brother, I heard that from my old man literally 100 times.
Right.
And when he said it, I just knew something was just aligning there, you know?
Yes.
But I'm sitting in this meeting and I'm kind of pissed, the cop lied, I lied. Well, I'm an addict, I'm supposed to lie, right? And this guy, AA'er, that subtle AA wisdom, right? Guy comes up to me, and like you said, South Side, I can be a little aggressive. I don't recall the guy's physical stature, but I know it wasn't imposing. And he comes up and he pokes me on the side of my chest, and he says, "You know what?" He says, "That prosecutor was a blessing to you." He said he poked and he exposed everything that was there: deceit, manipulation, lies. And I said my blood pressure went up to about 200 over 100.
Awesome. Sure.
And you know what? I realize now, this is 22 years later, I realize how sage and just, the courage it takes to come up to a pretty large body individual and say that. And to me, it's really the essence of what we do. Because patting people on the head and, it'll be okay. No, keep using it. It probably won't be okay.
You'll probably be dead.
You'll probably be dead.
Yep. All right, so I got to jump in here
right.
and hit one of my topics that I have changed over my path of sobriety and recovery. So, Don, my story. I was a relapse king. I've been in over 80 hospitalizations for detoxes. I mean, all kinds of shit. So I loved coming back to the rooms and getting hugged. Oh, Glenn, it's going to be okay, man. It's, hey.
Welcome. Keep coming back.
Yeah,
buddy.
keep coming back. Hey, good to have you back, right? So now, at one point I got to the point where the neurosurgeon, Red Scrubs, said, "You're not going to live through the night. You have a brain bleed." I was a 4-6. "You have a brain bleed. You're not going to live through the night." And I laid back, and I'm like, well, I knew this shit would get me sometime, right? But now I see so much coddling, and I've been to so many funerals, and I know, a dude, John from the room, who relapsed, and he drove to the hospital, was sitting in the hospital parking lot to go get help, and he died in his car. So I see people coddle, and I actually have like a presentation I do on relapse prevention, and I got a big fire alarm. I said, I'm not looking to beat people up, but let's put it in perspective what relapse is really all about, right? Because you're lucky, you're fortunate you have the opportunity to come back. Some don't. And they're like, well, tell the alcoholic when they come back, and I always challenge, I'm kind of some people think I'm a dick, but I come back, hey, what do you say to the people that don't make it back?
Yeah, right.
What do you say to the people that relapse and die? Because it just happened.
It just happened this week. Matt D just passed.
In our world.
Yes.
So I love tough love. I'm trying to figure out how, Don, to say it without sounding like a dick, because people are expecting and they want to hug so bad, and I don't punch them in the face, but I try to put a PowerPoint of reality in front of them.
Glenn, I've heard the adage to trouble the comfortable and comfort the troubled. And, they say if you minimize someone's pain, oftentimes you minimize their motivation.
Well, that's why they say don't give people Kleenexes. Let them fucking cry it out.
Yeah.
Let them feel it.
In the big book talking about being beaten into that state of reasonableness, most of us don't just have this epiphany and say, you know what, I'm through with alcohol and cocaine. I'm going to turn my life over to God today.
Right.
It's
usually somewhere.
Well, it's usually with circumstances we didn't want.
Right.
And you were talking earlier when I listened to your earlier segment, and a friend likes to coin a phrase you were more or less talking about, was just paying that high cost of low living.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Addiction is demanding. Alcohol, substance abuse is demanding.
Yes, it is.
It's hard. Pick your heart.
And when you come in here, who says it should be easy?
Right.
Nobody.
When we were using, who cared? I was totally apathetic about whether you understood the idiot choices I was making.
Right.
So all of a sudden I get sober 6 months, and you should all understand what I'm doing. Where would I, you guys were talking about expectations. Where could I logically have that explanation?
Yep.
If you understand, fine. If you don't, fine. You were referencing about if they like you, great. And if they don't like you, great.
I get the sense you don't really care if people are liking you.
Here's the thing to answer that. There's a lot of, 12-step. How you would approach someone on a 12-step. obviously that's tailored to you.
Right.
Okay, Glenn, you have your persona.
Yep.
I have mine. And the thing is, we're not in competition. No. We're in cooperation. I heard a woman in a meeting.
The three of us make us better.
That's right.
Exactly. I heard a woman in a meeting say this, and let's just say she's kind of eccentric. It's not real unusual to find eccentric people in an AA meeting. And she goes, I am so grateful that you people carried your message 20 different ways, because I needed to hear it all 20.
Yeah, that's
So, I always get, it's kind of a trip, like, who am I to tell you how you 12-step, or, vice versa, because we really act in cooperation, not competition.
What took me years to figure out, and I tell guys this, we're part of a church group, and I say this a lot, I feel really comfortable today that I focus on where I'm at and try to do the next right thing. I feel I'm really good chocolate ice cream today. Right. What I know, not everybody likes chocolate ice cream, and yet there are people that do like chocolate ice cream. But and that's with any situation, any message. I could use PowerPoint. Somebody wants Google Slides, right? I mean, everybody wants something different, and that's okay. But when you use a reference manual, a study guide, a textbook like the big book, right? You can put it in your own style, but use the right content to put it in your style.
Right. And sometimes I think I have a desire in my heart to be strong because I need to speak the truth to somebody, but sometimes I come out a little too soft, but my desire, because I know it's life and death.
Well,
right?
I think what also can't be minimized, I had a dear friend, and I was at a speaker meeting, and a sponsee of hers was speaking, and this woman is very emotional. She's weeping, and she's lauding my friend, like, I wouldn't have made it without you, and her story was horrific, and I'm listening, and it was impossible not to be moved, okay? And we would and I had a consummate amount of respect and love for my friend in the way she worked with people, because she basically she did kind of pet them down to get well, okay? And of course, she would take exception with, you getting in your face and holding people accountable, like Danny G need to be held accountable, okay? And a lot of times, not only are we trying to help them, you're advocating for their wife, for children, people you've never met.
For their lives.
And you know what? And then finally, my sponsor hit me with a piece. He said, why don't you ask, and I'm not going to mention her name, your friend. He goes, maybe you should mention her that God brings a very different individual to you for help than he brings to her for help.
Oh, yeah.
And, not one key opens. I know that with a skeleton key, I believe there's only like 9 different versions that would work. Well, this isn't that way. We're all people, and everyone has a different personality. Everyone could be reached differently, And, of course, either God's everything or he's nothing. So he knows who he's bringing to us for help. And if I'm trusting him, because if you're rely like this, my pastor's taught me this. He says, if you're looking for the perfect messenger to lead you to God, you're going to be in for a long wait. Because none of us are. There's no perfect sponsor. There's no perfect messenger.
Right. You have a long-time sponsor?
I've had several sponsors. At my age now, they start dying off. And you know what? Even in that process, it's a trust process. One of my dear mentors used to say it this way. He says, God has an individual treatment plan for every one of us, and trust in him is at the heart of it. And you guys know, some people exit your recovery, and you're like, no, God, no, this person is too invaluable. And he's so effortlessly, one will leave, one
will come in.
One comes in.
Yeah. It's amazing. If you have an open mind and you have awareness and you reflect back, it's just amazing how the chess pieces are moved.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious it's not me. It's so obvious it's God working, and it's just so obvious that, I have such little, I am to work the plan.
Yeah.
Right.
So question, Glenn. So would you say that leads up to one of my favorite statements in the book? I'll paraphrase, but it's close to verbatim. The central fact of our life today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our heart and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous and has commenced for us what we could never do by ourselves. that statement always really hits. It's like, wow, because you catch yourself. Let's say you just getting out of self,
spiritual psychic change.
Yeah, but getting out of self, trying to help someone else genuinely, and you're thinking, this is not me. And the neighbor says, you're the best neighbor we ever had. No, I'm the neighbor from hell.
And I am.
And you see the transformation, and like you said, I've heard it said, I could see your ears better than you can. So we see it, we look at it in others, and it's empirical evidence. If it could happen for them, it could happen for us.
So long, Don. I grew up with the religion shit, and it just didn't work. And for me, it took a period of time. I mean, for quite a period of time, my higher power was my counselor that I surrendered to. For 4 months, I said, I will do anything you tell me to do, and I view that as surrender, right? Then it was my sponsor. Dude, I'm going to do everything you tell me to do, right? And that was ego deflating, because I was the man with all the strategies. I was the bar napkin guy that would build a business, and brilliant, right? But then along the way, I started unlearning the God that I grew up with, the vengeful lightning bolt God, send you to hell God. And I found the God who was loving and hugged the woman at the well, and all those stories that I believe in, the prodigal son story, a God of forgiveness. And I'm like, man, if people through the 8th and 9th step forgive me, and if God finally, I had a relation with God, and that was starting to work, and I still explore it today, but it works, and then I got to the point I can forgive myself. I was the last person to forgive, and I was really hard on myself. But one of the biggest things, is, when you surrender is ego. And, I thought my ideas and plans were always the best ones in the room. And now I say, hey, I like to ride in the back of the bus, or at least in the back half, and I'm amazed at just, I'm aware of my lacking ego or my lacking self-imposed talent, because somebody will say, hey, let's do it this way. And in my mind, I'm like, nah, we should do it this way. But I'm like, okay, I surrender. I'm like, I'll sit in the back of the bus, and guess what? The way turns out better. And I'm like, how does that work? That's some scientific experiment. So I'm just telling you, life is totally different when I have God, right, as my director. When I surrender to God and His plan, and I'm telling you, it took a long time, Don, but I have 100% concrete fact that I understand His will. And how He speaks to me is different than how He speaks to others. And, my sponsor is my God. My sponsor is my lighthouse, right? I still surrender my sponsor. And that's how I make it through today.
I know one thing that I'm... One thing that I'm 100% sold on, and that is that I had nothing to do with my recovery. People walked up to me. My mom is so proud of me. And I just look at her and I say...
That may be why it's working.
I say, yeah, right? Yeah. I say, but you don't understand. I tried myself so many times and failed. I am not sitting here because I followed the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. God led me to Alcoholics Anonymous. God took the desire, my compulsion, my obsession with the drink away from me. That blows my mind. I mean, the rest of it, yes, I need to maintain my sobriety, and there is a path in front of me that allows me to maintain my sobriety and hold on to this gift that only He gave me.
So if I could bring us back to Don here, Don, there's Goggins. I love Goggins, right? What Goggins taught me is I believe that our brains are, fight or flight, right? Self-protective, right? I think the croc brain, the inner brain, I forget the right word for it, goes back to the caveman days, right? We are wired for comfort. We're wired for self-preservation. We're wired for self-care, right? That's why our body stores fat, right? And for a day where we don't have food, right? I mean, that was their issue.
I'm in trouble.
But that's not our issue today because we got grocery stores and right. But back then, if you killed a bear, you had to let it last, right? So what I learned from Goggins and others is, I naturally wanted to avoid pain. Pain is a feeling that I don't like. And I would drink to avoid pain. I would drink to avoid the uncomfortableness. I would drink to avoid Thursday afternoon, cloudy afternoon boredom because I didn't like how that felt. It felt weird. now I'm aware of my feelings, and when I feel pain or discomfort, right, or suffering, mental suffering, I say I like to suffer better, I recognize that today. I'm aware of that. I say, okay, there's an opportunity here for growth, right? There's an opportunity, and there's guys, I work with a lot of guys, and they love to sit on the couch. And I'm like, life, sorry, Danny G over there sleeping on the couch, but life begins when you get off the couch, right? And not just physically, but metaphorically from a comfort zone, right? And even today, I don't like standing and pouring coffee in meetings because I'm going to pour on somebody, right? That's a discomfort for me, but I still get up and do it, right? And I found that's where life starts to get valuable. I wanted to say fun, but I'd be lying to you. Mm-hmm. It's not fun getting out of the comfort zone, right? But that's where the value and growth really happens. So get off the fucking couch.
To kind of piggyback on that, a colleague of mine termed an addiction is a commitment to maintain control of my life for the purpose of feeling good. Okay? And it's really all about, it's just recovery is not really a journey for the comfortable. I mean, I love the adjectives in the first step, alcohol, the rapacious creditor. We had approached AA expecting to be taught self-confidence. Then we were told that as far as alcohol was concerned, self-confidence was no good whatsoever. And who cares to admit utter defeat, complete defeat? They really kind of bring it home with adjectives, So there's not a lot of wiggle room there. And Spurgeon says, if you truly long to save men's souls, you must spoon them a great deal of disagreeable truth. And especially someone coming in new. They're coming in, come on, we're all legends in our own mind. You're a baller, you're a player, you were the coolest guy in the bar, your stories were so interesting. When in reality, it was like, listen, you're boring, it's the same old bullshit you've been talking for years, I'm tired of listening to it, okay? Well, you come in AA, all of that doesn't leave you, so someone has to deliver you some truth, that you're really not balling anymore. You're wearing skinny jeans, you're 55 years old. Like a lot of this life, I was telling my sponsee here, a lot of that life, like some of the piece when you talk about wearing AA with like a loose garment, some of it is just accepting what station you're at in life. I'm a little further along in life, let's say, than you are, Glenn. But I find a comfort level. I have a pretty simple life. You guys were talking about getting up. I like to get up early. I go on a 6-mile walk. I don't know, like Forrest Gump. Where are you walking? Nowhere.
Right.
But I just walking. I like to do it. I get home. I do some reading. Later I'll go to an AA. If you'd have told me 23 years ago this would be my life, I might have got nauseous or vomited. But, when sanity gets restored and then you factor in some of God's will, and it's like, I don't know, did he birth any of us to find a cure for cancer? I don't know, but we could leave the world and the people we encounter in a little better shape.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Hey, this has been a good half hour. Can we come back one more time?
Absolutely, man.
All right, awesome. Let's do it next week.
Come on back, Don.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.